is no longer important. From your own struggle, you saw that when you go to the street, that's when the things shifted. Even the president coming on the X space was a result of what you did on the street. When you stormed the parliament, there was an uprising across the country. If you had done that on social media, nobody would have taken attention. Nobody would have paid attention.
Senator, allow me to correct you.
Yes.
It was the social media and the
Hello?
social space and the digital space that led to
Yes?
that. So
Just repeat somebody, I missed you. You said allow me.
Okay, Senator, just continue. Catch kindly. If you want to speak, you'll raise up your hand. Please, let us have decorum and order.
So
Senator,
we
continue.
must look at some foundational stages. The Sabasaba thing was responsible for removing Article 2A, which allowed multipartism, which escalated into the clamor for a new constitution, which allowed us the new constitution, which gives us the human rights that allow us to go out and do what you did and hold people accountable. Although that is still not available in terms of application, sometimes the law enforcement does not uphold the constitution, and many issues are done in violation of the constitution. The street for me remains the ultimate arena. Even when you go for elections, you go on the street to convince people that you have an agenda, and you sell it to people, whether you are cheating them, whether you mean it, but you go on the street and look for votes. So let us look at everything in terms of what value they bring to the struggle. It's not a narrative, it's not a single story. The struggle is an anthology. It's a collection of stories, a collection of efforts. All sound to differ that sometimes the people are targeted and injured are sellouts or automatically become sellouts. It's not necessary. Some people have died, people have lost lives. And in this country, right from the likes of Mekatilili Wamenza, when you come down to Mora, you come down to Akinahari Tuku, you come down to the Mau Mau, you come down to the various liberations, you come down to where we are today. Kenyans have lost life to achieve progress. Kenyans have had to stand up to the monster, face it in open daylight, and move the thing forward. Even so, in very developed countries like the US, wherever, when things become difficult, people go on the street to express their dissatisfaction with governance and other issues. So let us value the tools that we have, and let us not drop any of the tools we have. Let us use all the tools we have, depending on what the circumstances are. That's all that I'll pray. But I'm very happy that the Kenyan spirit of resisting, of fighting back, which begins with the likes of Mekatilili Wamenza, is still alive even in your generation. Every generation in this country has stepped forward and said no to oppression, no to exploitation, and no to bad governance in all its forms. And I'm very happy with what you have achieved. I'm very happy with what you have done. Sellouts will always be there. And if you look at some of us, at one point, we began being man solo, began acting alone, because you could not know whom you are going to battle with. You could not give your back to anybody because you didn't know whether he was an agent, whether he was looking for relevance or whatever. And so that will always be there. It should not demobilize us. It should not frustrate us. Just continue. If there are people who want to go for Sabasaba, it's an important milestone in the history of this country, and it has been marked all along. Those who are there saw what kind of violence more you could unleash. The same violence which we thought we had overcome. We saw it again on the streets the other day being unleashed by our security forces. And I think going forward, we need now to, as a people, you need to understand that one thing is very important. Politics is how things are done. I've sat in parliament for close to 2 years now. I've always, all along, I've been I have not been able to enter parliament. And it's a space that needs to be occupied in terms of not protesting. As a protester, I protested. We brought those pigs. Even the word MPigs were the ones who coined it with the Kinabodi Mwangi. But now you come to get inside and realize that you need more people with conviction inside parliament than we have today. Because parliament is a very powerful tool, but when it lands in the hands of people who are just self-seekers, who have no convictions, who have nothing to stand out with, it becomes a problem. When you come back to the finance bill, I began fighting the finance bill in 2018. I filed a petition number 253 of 2018. At that time, I don't know those who remember, but there was a time in this country when goods could disappear around budget reading time. Because as soon as the minister read the finance bill, it was not, as soon as the minister read the finance bill, it would take effect immediately without an input of parliament. And there was something called the Provisional Collection of Taxes Act, which allowed that to happen. That then parliament would come back later, sometime in September, October, to rubber stamp what the executive had done. I went to court to challenge that kind of arrangement whereby the executive was taxing Kenyans without the input of the legislature. Remember the Boston Tea Party? Remember the Boston Tea Party, where the clarion call was that there was no taxation without representation. So it's the representatives who really tax. It's parliamentarians who tax. The executive only proposes, and the legislature does the taxation, because because the budget is an act of parliament called an appropriation act, which must be introduced in parliament, approved by parliament, and signed into law by the president. It's parliament which ultimately taxes Kenyans. The executive only proposes. So when the finance bill was being enacted without Kenyans, without representatives taking charge, the executive was basically taxing people without representation. And so the court agreed with me. It quashed that thing and required that the finance bill must be tabled in parliament in a certain period, be subjected to public participation, and be approved. And that's how now we realize we are now where we are today, that you have had a chance to engage with the finance bill and fight it. Last year, when I went to court to challenge the finance bill, not many people understood what I was doing. Not many people came up. But I'm happy with what the media did, what people on social media have done with this particular finance bill, and got the entire population of Kenya to understand that they were being scammed, that they were being robbed. And so going forward, we need to use this space, as you have it, to escalate our protest, to include professional interventions in sectors that are hurting us. We have a beautiful constitution, which we need to implement. And for me, one of the areas of implementing this constitution is by reviewing our legal framework. There are very many laws that are being applied on Kenyans, which are against the Constitution of Kenya, 2010, and need to be looked at and corrected. And if people would volunteer and engage in that space and say, okay, these are the laws of Kenya, how do they compare to the Constitution, and ferret out and expose those which are unconstitutional, we'll be very grateful. We need to look at our loans that have been borrowed. I've seen the president has put up this task force, which is unconstitutional, to say that it's going to look at the various things. We need to reject those kind of things and insist that things are done. Let the Auditor General tell us, first of all, why she has not been auditing the budget all this time, yet the Constitution requires that auditing the public debts. The Constitution requires that to be done. If you look at the report of the Auditor General, an average report of the Auditor General, it's basically PR. Although occasionally you get some complaint about this and that, but largely it's PR. When I engaged with when I go to the Senate and I had the opportunity to formally engage with the Auditor General's reports from across the country, and especially from Busia, knowing knowing what is happening on the ground in Busia, and you look at the Auditor General's report, you just say this is somebody doing PR. And then you wonder why we have this kind of stuff. So when you look at the rot in the counties, you look at the rot wherever, you got the EACC. They hardly take any action that is meaningful. You saw the Obado thing is the epitome of that kind of behavior that they have. You get the DPP when you had the NYS scandals. Money was lost through budgeted corruption. The banks that handled that scam, the DPP, instead of prosecuting them, goes into an agreement with them. They pay some 900 million shillings to the DPP. They go scot-free. These are the kind of things that we need to begin interrogating and auditing and asking questions and saying, why is this like that? The Obado thing that somebody has mentioned, whereby billions of shillings are lost and somebody is given a tap on the wrists to pay 200 or 300 million shillings. These are the kind of things that are bringing us down. So I really pray that we don't get into a situation whereby we end up with the paralysis of analysis. Let us get forward. Let us occupy every space. Let us use every opportunity that exists to go forward. Let us launch new leaders. Let us take over. You people, you need to take over the majoritarian institutions. You need to get to county assemblies. You need to get to parliament. And we need to do those kind of things. And we need to insist that the constitution is implemented. For example, on the presidential election, Article 138, Clause 2 of the Constitution is very clear that a presidential election takes place in each one of the 290 constituencies. Where does Bomas come from? Why have they refused to announce the results of a presidential candidate at the constituency? So that we know how people have performed in the constituencies. And even the media can just call and say this election is going this way or the other way. Why must we wait for the Chebkatis of this world in Bomas to do what they do? And then the country becomes confused. You don't know whether the person declared is the winner or he lost. So those kind of things. And then you go to the courts. Our judges still need retraining on the technical aspects of the constitution. They go and make pronouncements that when you look at them sometimes and you just say, how silly can a human being be? Like when you had the Raila one, you had this pronouncement that technology does not work. And yet all of us know that technology does not fail because it is based on the laws of physics. Technology can only be compromised when it encounters sabotage, incompetence, or negligence. And yet the Supreme Court is pronouncing that the technology does not work. So when you go to the architecture of elections, you find that the elections are supposed to be digital. You are told that the elections must be simple, accurate, verifiable, and prompt. Verifiable by who? By the voter. Look at countries which have gone digital, like Brazil. You are given a serial number, you can track your vote after voting, and you know that your vote was counted so and so. Here we are in the digital spaces. We have M-Pesa, I've got all these things, but characters want to still do elections in the manual way. You find that the Constitution does not provide for spoiled ballots. Here the Supreme Court has invented that spoiled ballots can be there. And then questions that do they count or they don't count, you see. So we need to go back and look at our constitution and implement the constitution. We are complaining about public money being misused, people walking out with bundles of money. This money comes from nowhere but the treasury. Yet when you look at Article 251, the treasury and the Ministry of Finance are separate and distinct. The treasury is run by professionals, the Ministry of Finance is run by politicians to set up policy and whatever. But now the Public Finance Management Act fuses these two things together. Now the president appoints the minister for finance, then the minister, then the permanent secretary for finance, and then they become the bosses of the treasury, and therefore the treasury becomes pocket money for the president, and the president and these politicians have unlimited access to this money. That's why they go about pronouncing themselves that we shall do this, we shall do that, as if there was no budget in parliament saying that in this financial year, public money will be used in this way. So we need to say that, go back to what the constitution says, separate the treasury from the politicians, so that they don't have unlimited access to finances. So there are all these things that we need to look at, and we need to fight for, and we need to ensure that they see the light of day. The constitution is violated in so many ways. That's why we are having this problem. Some do no good and then come up say that they want to amend the constitution, they want to do whatever. There's no problem with the law. The problem is with the human beings who refuse to obey the law. And every time we have got a problem, people tend to look to the law that we want to amend this one. No, the constitution is okay. Let us implement it. Let us make all the laws of Kenya aligned to it. And I'm telling you, we shall be able to move this country forward. We shall be able to achieve what is supposed to achieve. Court orders being disobeyed. I've won 3 cases against the state, saying that boards of parastatals must be filled competitively so that people who have the competencies in the area and who are best suited for the place can be given the jobs. What do you have? They have disobeyed those orders. They are still appointing people who have failed in elections. They handpick relatives, friends, and dump them on the boards. If you go to any board in this country today of a parastatal, none of them is professional. The MDs have a problem. They have to keep on giving these people trips. They have to give them all manner of allowances. They have to allow them to make all manner of tenders and contracts. And so you find a situation whereby parastatals, whose initial conceptualization was to create a developmental state. A developmental state, which means that state that develops people to a point where they can then take off. Like the developmental states that pushed the Asian tigers, that have pushed Turkey to be able to be where they are today. These parastatals of ours became undermined right from independence in 1963. So they have not been able to deliver. You have got orders saying that don't do this, the president is doing it. You have got court orders, don't employ these chief administrative secretaries because it's unconstitutional. You cannot have anybody between the cabinet secretary and the PS. The courts have pronounced it in 2 of my cases, one by Matindi. These pronouncements are there. They are disobeyed. Now these people are sitting in offices. They are being paid through cash because they carry money from the treasury the way they want. Then they pay through cash. So this kind of situation whereby we are unable to implement the constitution is what we should really look at and say, bottom line, let us implement this constitution to the letter. And when we implement the constitution, we shall be beginning a journey towards a destination that Kenyans wished for themselves. Look at our national anthem. In the early 60s, look at the aspirations that Kenyans had. Why are we not able to achieve the blueprint that is in the national anthem? Why is justice not our shield and defender? Why is this country not a land of prosperity? Why are we poorer than we were a few years ago? Why are our young people unable even to access legitimate sex? They cannot marry because they cannot keep wives and husbands. Why? So these are the things that we must look at, and we must confront them, and we must do whatever it takes. Let us throw the kitchen sink at them. Let us demand, not get away from the demand that Ruto must vacate office with this administration and we get a new beginning. Let us not waver from this particular clear deliverables. Let us talk to them as they talk on the spaces. For those of our people who get compromised, that's up to them. Everybody has a melting point. But I know people in this country who have stood up to the challenges, who have fought the good fight, and they still have conviction. But you people have better tools than we had. You people can call each other out without going through KBC. You don't need to be covered by the nation media. You can mobilize, you can organize. And please mobilize, organize, get registered as voters. As we've pushed that the ID should be used as a voting device, before we get there, get registered as voters so that you can choose the next crop of politicians. Because ultimately, politics is how things are done. Politicians are done to make decisions that affect all of us. And as Plato said, if good people don't engage in politics, they leave room for bad people to govern them. So I would really urge you young people to begin organizing among yourselves and see whom do we put where. But also you have seen young people who have been elected and they become vultures, worse than the old hyenas. So let us be able to vet our people. We know each other. You know somebody. If somebody is doing something for cash, it's very easy to tell. If somebody is doing something for conviction, it's also easy to tell. Let us have conviction. Let us also manage our lifestyle. Sometimes why people fall for these things is the kind of lifestyle they have. You get some little money, you buy a very big car. You can't run it. You must be corrupt. You must do all these funny things. And go back to the Bible. Look at the qualities of people who achieve in the struggles. Look at David. I always look at David and Goliath. David was a person of extreme faith. David was a person of great skill in terms of his sling and stuff. And David had integrity. So let us look at beyond integrity, let us look at the skills that are available. You have talked about education. Education must not remain for the rich. Kenya has got enough wealth to make education from nursery school to graduate to the first degree to be taxpayer funded. I don't use the word free. Free education is not like free education. A taxpayer funded education can be realized in this country. There's no reason why MPs should be given so much money in terms of bursary, governors bursary, MCS bursary, who bursary. Why? Those monies are the people which have bribed politicians and compromised them. So let us take that money away from individuals. Let politicians who are in the legislature legislate and oversight and appropriate and represent. They should not execute. Let those who are elected to be executors execute under the supervision of legislators, because this illicit money, they become slush funds, are the problem of this country. We are wasting so much money, we are losing so much money, and we are not able to govern this country the way it is supposed to be governed. Some courses are useless. Who said that divinity is useless? Who? All courses are important. Let us give the people a chance to study everything that they can study on earth. Let us open up to new ideas. Let us open up the young people to come and do what they can be. Because unless we do that, we are going to end up in more and more difficult situations. And I'm very, very happy that you young men and women came out in the manner you did. You're able to document most of your struggles. In our time, we did not have these smartphones and whatever, so you could hardly get proper documentations. You were beaten up, you were done whatever. Personally, I don't have 10 teeth in my mouth. My skull was broken up in 2 places, plastic there. But we had to continue fighting because we knew that others had paid a higher price. There are people who went to the grave because they went to the streets, because they demanded that Kenya can be a better place. The same demand that you are making, let us do that. Let us come out in our numbers, and ultimately, let us not ignore the Kenyan street. Be it in elections, get out in your numbers. Register as voters. Make decisions. Be it at public participation forums, get out in your numbers. Make the public participation realistic. And if you are ignored, get up in your numbers the way you did the other day and went on the street and pushed the bar and went over the top. But finally, let us look critically at how power is acquired in this country. And I go back to chapter 7, which addresses elections. The standard of elections in Kenya is no longer free and fair. After the 207 clashes around elections, we had a Kriegler commission. After that, we had the constitution, and our constitution requires a tamper-proof election. Free and fair. The talk of free and fair elections are not in the architecture of our constitution. A tamper-proof election, an election that is done in real time, an election that concludes at the constituency, where we know who have been elected, the MCA, who has been elected member of National Assembly, who has been elected women rep, who has been elected governor, who has been elected senator, who has been elected president in that constituency. Then if those offices that require further aggregation can be done, like the county offices and the presidency. But taking coming up with bombers should never happen. Bombers should never happen. Let us have the digital election that is anticipated. Let it be possible for somebody in Mombasa to vote in Moyale without having to travel to Moyale to vote. Let it be possible to have our results announced within minutes. There's no reason why we should take so long to have the results announced. If things are done digitally, it will be instant. And the good thing with the digital platforms is that even if they are compromised and somebody puts an algorithm which can corrupt things, those who know how to look at these gadgets will just simply look in a matter of moments and say there was this thing which was interfering with the results. Remove the algorithm and the correct results come. So let us go digital. We have gone digital in money. We transact billions of shillings every day in this country digitally. There is no reason why the politicians are blocking us from having digital elections in this country where the cream can rise to the top. What we are having right now, the cream cannot rise to the top. Only rubbish rises to the top. And in very, very rare occasions, do you get the cream rising to the top. And that's the crisis we have. The crisis of representation. We shall only cure that crisis of representation when we embrace digital elections that will be able to make it impossible for human hands to interfere and go scot-free. So I pen off by saying thank you very much. I'll continue listening. I usually listen in these groups, sometimes through friends' notes, but you people are making a lot of progress. Don't be discouraged. Don't be discouraged. The struggle is not a walk in the park. Even if you remain a single person, go ahead. When I fought for the National Theatre in 1994, everybody feared. I made a demonstration that I was alone. I made a one-man demo along the streets of Nairobi. I was arrested. I was locked up. I came out through a hunger strike. So let us not worry about the numbers. Even if just one person comes out, that's important. So thank you very much. Thank you very much. Continue the struggle. Alusha continua. We are all together. Personally, I'm ready to be led by these young people. And the visions you have are visions some of us may not even understand, because you have grown up in a totally different environment. You've had an education that is largely broader than some of us have had. And personally, I'm ready to be led by you guys. And let us get it done. We want our country back. Please, Gen Z, the millennials, help us get it back. In every generation, it's the youth who go to war. Even in Ukraine right now, it's the young people, the Gen Zs and the millennials who are on the front line fighting Russia. So get us out of Babylon, get us back to the promised land.